we navigated. And never did we fathom that we'd complicate it. Must have been something that we debated. Should have kept it real and how we meant it. Didn't mean to break your heart. Didn't mean to let us fall apart. When all is said and done, let me fix your love again. Give me something that I can love again, love again. If there's nothing, promise I can fix your love again, love again. Give me something that I can love again, love again. If there's nothing, promise I can fix your love again, love again.
Remember when it used to be that love was simpler? Each and every touch was full of splendor. Before it shifted, left us sitting tired. I can't explain it. No, how did our love get so tainted? Somehow your heart became abrasive, my words became abrasive. I wanna take it back to basics. I never meant to break your heart. I never meant to tear your world apart. When all is said and done, let me fix your love again.
Swan FM 93.6. Welcome to Soulscapes with CRG right here on the Cap City's #1 radio station. And today I took a trip because I needed to take this trip. If you've heard of GoGo music, or if you haven't heard of GoGo music or Ralf Gum, where have you been? Today we decided let's visit the man in the comfort of his home, in the comfort of his studio. Thanks, Ralf, for welcoming us here. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you very much for another interview, and this time with a little twist, because not at the radio. You saved me the drive to Pretoria.
Oh yes.
By coming here, and welcome to my home.
Thank you
my
very
studio.
much, man. It's so beautiful in here. I mean, you're running so many gadgets. Yeah, I am dumbfounded. So many percussions. Do you play all these things?
I'm a collector, you know. I once made the mistake to sell a lot of my equipment when I thought everything would become digital, and I wanted to have a small setup, and I was moving to Spain at that time, and I reduced my equipment, and it still hurts now. So I keep everything, or usually everything I buy, or at least if it's useful, and I record all of what you see here. I wouldn't say I really play everything, because I'm not good enough on some of the instruments to call me playing them, but I create my samples, I create my loops. I prefer to record them because if you take it from a sample library, the
Mhm.
chances another person takes the same sample
Exactly.
is quite high, and I want to avoid that and create more of an own signature sound by recording that stuff.
Talking about moving to Spain, you say you moved to Spain at some point. Right now you're in South Africa. You've been in South Africa for the past, is it 10 years? And most people would ask the question, why South Africa?
Because it's lovely here with all the challenges we see in the country. It's still beautiful. The weather is beautiful, the people are beautiful, and the music scene is beautiful, especially for the sound I do, which is house music. It had even more mainstream appeal maybe 10 years ago when I moved here, but I see a big comeback of house music currently. It never left, actually. It
Yeah.
always was in people's hearts. And that's what I love about the country, except all those other great things, you know, like super friendly people, friends, and it's
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. So would you say moving to Spain from Germany did somehow have an influence on your sound as well as moving to South Africa?
It's difficult to say. I believe everybody is influenced by what surrounds him. So
Okay.
probably yes. Moving to Spain, it was a short period. I tried this. I just needed a change at that point after my studies, and friends of mine were living on Mallorca, which is a Spanish island, so I moved there too. But returned to Germany after 1.5 years. Those 1.5 years have surely been influential too, because I worked with people I didn't work with before, like Kiko Navarro, who is based on Mallorca. And so yes, there are always influences, but still I think the music I do mainly comes out of me and out of my heart. And obviously I'm influenced, but still it's kind of what comes out of me at the same time.
Beautiful. So when do you say the music bug bit you, and when did you realize that it bit you?
Early teenage years. I always loved to listen to music on radio. And at some point, maybe when I was 13, 14, I realized there's so much music, so much more music out there than what you would hear on German radio.
Yeah.
It was the time we had the possibility of getting the first satellite radio from the UK and so forth. And I realized there's funk, there's disco, there's soul. There was so much music to explore. And I just wanted to explore and started going to record shops, digging for that music you wouldn't necessarily get through mainstream media.
All right.
And yeah, kept on collecting music, and at some point I wanted to play that music to other people, which makes you become a DJ.
Okay.
And when I started out as a DJ, there was he became a friend of mine, another person in my hometown, who had a studio and who was loving the same kind of music. And so he found a like-minded person and said, "We love the same music. I have a studio. Don't you want to see how to do that music?"
Oh, okay.
And when that happened, I knew it.
And
That's
how
what
old were
I
you then?
want to do.
How old were you then when that happened?
That happened maybe when I was 19, 20.
Okay.
And immediately I started saving up for own equipment because I knew that's something I want to be able to do anytime, and I knew it's something I didn't know where it will lead me yet. You
Okay.
know, you start out because it fascinates you, and I just kept going.
So tell me about that first time when you encountered that friend of yours. You went into his studio. When you left his studio, what was that feeling?
A very mixed feeling, because the first time you see a sampler or a keyboard in your life and you don't really know how it functions, you leave with a feeling that you have to learn a lot if you want to, really make music. I only knew music attracts me. I knew DJing was in my blood. I liked it from the first time I was able to DJ to people. And I had the same feeling about equipment. It was like, I don't know much, but I want to know. So, I started collecting and working on that knowledge. Most is self-taught. My friend helped a lot in the beginning. Unfortunately, he passed on very early. He was a bit older than me, and he passed when he was 31. Just maybe when we've been working for 3 years or knowing each other for 3 years and working a bit together. And from then onwards, I needed to self-teach myself again, because as well on that small village close to a small town in Germany, there was nobody else who could have taught me,
So many people would ask, I mean, when we know that Ralf comes from Germany, we always think the big cities, Munich, Düsseldorf is a small town, right? Middle size, right? Where exactly are you from in Germany?
I'm from a village called Thüngen, which is next to a smaller city called Würzburg.
Okay.
And Würzburg, again, the next bigger town would be Frankfurt, which is about 1 hour by car.
Right.
So before you've been 18 there, you hardly had the chance to get there. Once you were able to drive, you could, get there. And as well, obviously, Frankfurt at that time, when I was able to go to clubs, 18, 20, 22, that age, was mainly known for techno.
All right.
We had some of the most famous, techno stars of the time. Sven Väth still is very popular and known in that scene. So house wasn't really represented. I mainly went to those clubs, and it was a big influence, and I loved techno for a certain time.
Okay.
But I realized there's something missing for me. There's some soul missing. There's some message in the music missing. You know, some singers who tell your story. And therefore I moved on to house, and the scene got a bit better some years later, mid of the 90s. Finally house reached Germany too, thanks to the work of different people who were into it and who pushed it. It's always if the artists and DJs don't make it happen, it will not
happen.
happen.
So this is Swan FM 93.6. We're still chatting to Mr. Ralf Gum here. We're going to be with him for a bit of some time in his studio. Man, I was so amazed when I saw the studio. I've seen it before on Instagram, on Twitter, just a little piece of this and that. But when I got in here, I was so amazed. I was like, geez, can I come and visit every week? That's the first thing I thought. And I'm like a child in a candy store. But in any case, if you want to be seeing this, you can check it out on facebook.com/Cap City's #1 radio station. And if you're listening on 93.6, don't worry, it's going to be still up on Facebook, but only snippets of it. So you better check out the YouTube channels, the Basement Music RSA page, as well as my personal page. So check out CRG_Soulscapes. You'll check out what we are getting up to here in Ralf Gum's studio, just chatting about his journey all the way from GoGo music, the way it began, all the way to where it is right now. Track 100th release, right? 100th release. Man, that's a crazy milestone. We're going to get to that one in a minute. But I want to know right now is, who were your first influences when it comes to techno that then drove you to house after that?
It was mainly some records I found in record stores. Like end of the 80s, there were a compilation series which finally made its way to Germany too, which was called Chicago House Samplers and Acid House Samplers. And you were able to buy them in, even more commercial record stores and bigger shops. So it was easy to find that music finally, and that started it, that transition from listening to various genres and, going to techno clubs because it still was the best option towards house music. And I've been lucky that I could travel to New York in 1991 or 2, I'm not sure.
So tell me about that travel to New York. Sorry to butt in. Was it music related?
It was a wish to go there because I knew the music is happening there, and I saved up, and I don't know. Yeah, at some point I've been able to go. I think I finished school with a good note, or I started my studies, and my parents helped me to afford that holiday. And that kind of really made me sure about house music, because I was able to listen to all those people we still know as legends, like Louis Vega had a Wednesday at Sound Factory Bar, Danny Tenaglia at Sound Factory on Friday, and all those names you would know now, Spinner, started their careers, and it has been a huge thing, and it was the first time I could listen to house music from beginning to end of the night without interruption. And I felt, yes, that's the journey I feel, because the house music bug really bite.
I can just imagine how you felt that time, just like how I felt when I walked in here, seeing all these instruments around.
Yeah, you come as a teenager and you see, you see, not teenager anymore, but as a young person, and you see the glorious nightlife of New York with exactly the sound you want to hear. Yeah. That was, I think, the final nail I needed to know house music is really
in you.
What is in me and what I really feel. And I came back from that trip and just continued with more strength to push what I wanted to push. Finally got residencies where I could play my music, and so forth. And from there onwards, the journey began.
All right. So now when you talk about the journey beginning, let's talk about the first record label you worked for, the first record you released. How was the process of working on that? What was the record? And, how did you feel about it afterwards when you released it?
So the very first things I did wasn't me alone, but was with that friend, and eventually actually a third person, that friend who owned a studio. And, none of us was a great musician at that time, I would say, but we knew how to get something together and had some tracks. And part of that New York trip was actually looking if we can't find a label, because at that time there was no real soulful deep house label existing in Germany. So you were naturally looking at the United States, which is as well where a lot of music for the South African compilations came at that time. If you look back at DJ Fresh and so forth. So luckily we found a label which released, I think in 1993, our first EP. It was on New Generation Records, and the feeling was amazing. They promised us the world. They said we could sell millions, and we didn't, obviously. And we never made money out of it, but it's cool because we had a release on an American label as German young upcoming boys who just started kind of DJing and producing. And of course we celebrated that.
So when it comes to that, you've released the song, you've been promised millions, and you've got this fire that's burning in you, but those millions don't come. Don't you get to a point of despondency and thinking, no, maybe having some doubts, maybe this is not for me?
yeah, you have challenges and you need to learn along the way, you know. If the fire in you is big enough, one or two disappointments will not stop you from doing what you want to do. And there always will be setbacks, and as well, part of growing your career is becoming realistic and knowing what you can achieve and what you probably might not achieve. You still can try to, you know, push those borders further and go further. But no, it wouldn't change me or stop me from doing house music only because one time a payment didn't come in or I had more expectations. The love for music is too much.
Yeah. It's on FM 93.6. You're still tuned into Soulscapes with CRG. When we come back after the break, we will go into the first release of GoGo music.
Your
still tuned into Soulscapes with CRG, hashtag the dance floor. And today we're having a conversation with Ralf Gum in his studio. Still like a kid in a candy store, I won't lie to you. So if you're not checking us out, if you're listening on radio 93.6, switch over to facebook.com/CapCities1 or /Soulscapes with CRG. Even the third option, Basement Music RSA. I mean, we're all on all these platforms. Basement Music is going to broadcast everything on YouTube. So the songs in full on all channels, except Facebook. You know, Facebook is, they can be funny sometimes. So even though we're with the owner of the songs, but they won't want us to broadcast those. So now we've been talking about your journey in music. Let's take it forward and now talk about GoGo Music. How was it formed? What spurred you to actually start the label? I know in the beginning you were promised millions with that other label. You released your song, you're so happy. But then what was that turning point where you thought, no, let me form a record label and call it GoGo Music?
I mentioned earlier when I started releasing, there hasn't been any house labels in Germany, which changed in the 90s, but I still felt there's a real soulful label lacking, excuse me, which really focuses on that sound and which pushes that sound in Germany. And as well, I wanted to have my own platform where I'm not controlled by other A&R people of labels who might tell you to change certain things in your productions to make it more whatever. And yeah, I just felt, after having released on most German and some international top labels, it's time to create that platform and do it. Try to really create it for the love of soulful house music and keep that spirit no matter what. That was the intention. And I decided to do so in 2001, which was the same year I moved to Spain. So the first releases on the label have been produced in Spain. The first release was actually together with a friend who was living there for a while when I moved there, and DJ'd at different venues and produced his own stuff too. So we teamed up for the first release. And I only stayed in Spain for 1.5 years. Like I said, when I moved back, I kept on doing the same thing. It still was the vinyl area.
All right.
Before everything went digital, so it was much harder to get recognition and as well financially more difficult. You had to send vinyls to other DJs, in other countries because you couldn't send an email with the promo at that time.
Yes.
But I believe if you do something with love and you put effort behind it, it always works out. And it worked out with the label. 20 years later, we are still around.
Wonderful.
And, have released what I said before throughout. It's soulful vocal house music we stand for.
And that's what we love here on Soulscapes with CRG. I had to emphasize on the Soulscapes because Ralf Gum is, mostly soulful and vocal. So would you say then once you formed the label, you got a sense of freedom and started exploring even more in the soulful front of things?
Yes, it definitely gives you artistic freedom. At the same time, you have other commitments now, and you have other limitations, finances. When you start out, you don't have a studio like this, so as well, getting the sound where you want it is a limitation. So you always fight with limitations, but still that feeling of complete artistic freedom. Nobody can tell me what to do. overweight everything else.
Nice, nice. So you say the first release was Dara, right? You say?
Yes, it was called Dara Band, which was a combination out of Daniel Klein and Ralf Gum. We took the first letters of our first names,
Okay.
put them together, and as Dara Band, we as well did 2 other remixes for other labels, and yeah, it was, sometimes you just vibe together and do some things together. But after I moved back to Germany, unfortunately, it was hard to keep the collaboration up.
Okay, okay. So now GoGo Music has been formed. You do the Dara Band release. You're looking for artists, obviously. You're looking for artists to work with. What was your criteria for the artists you looked for, and who was that first artist that you said, I want this one, when you returned to Germany?
I never really started looking for a lot of people. I was running GoGo alone, and I felt I can't have too many releases anyway. Every release costs time and as well costed money at that time. So usually a release had to recoup before I was able to do another one.
Yes.
Or maybe you plan for 2, but you need 1 to recoup to do the third. So it was step by step, and the artists came because the sound attracted them too. I never really was looking for signing only a song. I always was interested in working with people long term or longer term, so that you can grow together. And I think the first artist who really came was Roberto De Carlo, and another person who was there from the beginning, actually Benny Pecorayo, who was the only really house artist next to me in my hometown. He was bitten by that bug too. And I think he was is extremely talented, but like often after his studies, he decided to go the
Chemical engineering, mechanical, or whatever route.
In this case, pharmacy.
Wow.
Yeah. So he decided to work as a pharmacist, which was what he studied. Which is okay,
It's all right.
Yes.
I hope one day you can bring those, those capsules into the house.
People kind of came to the label. Unfortunately, some left again at some time because their path of life changed, and there was Artistic Soul for almost 10 years, who is probably one of the greatest to ever do it. But as well, at some point he decided house music financially doesn't get me what I expect, and left. And as with Benny, you can't change the path of people's life. And I always try to convince them to still do it, but if they don't, you can't. And you move on, and luckily always new people came. But the intention of the label anyway is not to release, like I said, a huge amount of records, because then I only would sit in office and work as a label manager and couldn't do my own stuff anymore.
Yeah. So now when you're looking at other labels, I know GoGo Music is starting to release and starting to churn out hits here and there. When you look at other labels releasing so much, do you not feel at any point a little bit of pressure to say, maybe I should also shake up and, get some more out there because of fear of being overshadowed by other labels?
I think there are definitely advantages of building a big catalog as a label, because you become more powerful the more music you have. You can create playlists with only your music, and everything is still new, And so there is value in creating a big catalog if it's your business model.
Yes.
It never has been my business model to do that, because I always have been in between being a label and an artist. And I have periods where the artist overweighs and I can't release much because I want to sit here and create my own things. And then I always have periods, maybe as well because there are interesting projects brought to me, where I focus more on the label work and release a bit more as well by other people. But yeah, it for me it was a life decision to not go that way and being that label who releases at least once a week or sometimes even more than one record a week.
Yeah.
I know Defected and let's say Nervous Records, for example, do like 3 or 4 releases a week. So if you don't have a big team who creates all those tools you need these days for a release, you need a cover, you need social media artworks, you need social media videos, you need a lot of content for every release. How should I manage that on my own without making it a full-time job, which is not the intention? Then you lose the artist Ralf Gum, you know.
True.
So I decided it must be a balance between having artists on the label. I don't want to use it only solely for me. I think it would become boring if it's only Ralf Gum. But at the same time, I don't want to release those huge amounts.
Beautiful. You're still tuned into Twan FM 93.6. This is Soulscapes with CRG. We're hanging out in Ralph's den. Yes, I keep changing the name. It's the studio, it's a den, it's the palace, whatever you want to call it, man. It's such a blissful moment for me just being here. And I'm sure those who can see my smile right now on Facebook or on YouTube, man, I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven. But now we're getting into the crux of the things. I know this is where most of you now really followed Ralf Gum. I'll fast forward it and take it to pre-2010. Kissing Strange.
Oh, then miss me. I don't know you, baby. Oh, you wanna lonely, baby. Only make me feel it. Only make me off the bone, kiss me, yeah. Make me feel, yeah, 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 yeah. Only when I get me, yeah, yeah.
Bingham, that relationship. And you guys did a couple of tracks. Did you guys do a couple of tracks before that? It was just Kissing Strangers first, right? And that was a big, big hit. How did that collaboration come about?
I was working on my first album, which released in 2008, but I started working on it maybe in 2005, and I knew Monique from the classics. People would know here too, like We Had a Thing.
Yes.
And then she kind of disappeared, and I always was wondering, where is that amazing singer? And while I was working on my album, she had a new release, which was with Quentin Harris, Poor People.
Poor People, yeah.
And I was like, okay, here she is. She's still around and she's still doing so. I would love to have her on my album. I want to work with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I just emailed to her and tried my luck.
Do you remember the wording you had on that email?
Yes, because it was honest. I think I wrote, "You might not know me, but I'm a German house artist working now on my first album. I did this and that before, and I have a track which I think could suit your vocals. Would you be interested listening to it?" Simple,
How long did the reply take?
The reply took, I think, quite a while, but I'm now used to it, because with Monique it always takes a while. She's not that person who steadily checks her emails and is online all the time. But eventually I got an answer, and she said she listened to some other stuff, and yes, I should send the playback I have in mind. And then it was fast that she got back and said, yes, it's cool. I like that track. The recording itself, again, took a while, because Monique takes forever to write her beautiful lyrics. They are so beautiful because she really takes time to work on every word she sings.
So now, take me to that time. Take me back to that time. You're working on your album. You've sent the email. She said, all right, send the stuff over. And she hasn't responded yet to say, okay, cool, let's work on this. What is Ralf thinking then? Are you thinking alternatives? Are you thinking, what if she says no?
No, in general, I'm a patient person and I don't get worried too fast. But when you work on an album, you have 9 other songs you care about. You just jump to another one where you might still need a singer, or where the singer just sends vocals, and you wait for an answer. It's cool.
I'm sure it's sitting at the back of your mind somewhere.
I mean, you wish for a positive answer, obviously, and it's not that you forgot that you're still waiting for an answer, but you can't, make it quicker, or you can't enforce it. So the best thing is to keep on doing your thing. If it takes too long, maybe thinking about a plan B. If Monique doesn't reply, who could I ask? But as long as you still have a lot of work on other tracks, it's cool to wait. You just work and wait, and eventually,
So
you get the answer. And if it's the last track that needs to be finished on the album, and then you have to make a decision and maybe move on.
Beautiful. So now the album comes out, right? Which track did you presume would blow up before the others?
Usually I had a quite good feeling regarding all albums and which tracks could blow up. I thought, from a soulful perspective, Kissing Strangers is the strongest track on the album. That's why we made it a single quite early. And I as well was very convinced with All This Love for You, already in the original form. And when we released it as a single and Rocco did remixes for it, I knew not only my version will work well, but what Rocco did is amazing too.
It was so amazing.
Yes,
it was so amazing.
So usually I have a good feeling. I thought those two could stand out.
So now they come out, Kissing Strangers, big track. All This Love for You, also a big track. And which region are you looking at it being big? Are you looking at Germany? Are you looking at Europe? Or are you also laying your eye on South Africa to say what's happening to the song that side?
The knowledge or that I heard about South Africa and the scene shortly started before I released that album.
Okay.
But there was no attention to really focus on the market. Kissing Strangers did very well internationally. It was that year the best-selling house track of the year on Traxsource.
Wow.
So there wasn't a certain territory I was looking at. I was happy to have my first album done and seemingly well received in different territories, licensed it to a Japanese label who toured me in Japan that year, and luckily and finally as well received a call from South Africa, which was DJ Christos.
Oh, yes.
Saying, look, we know your music quite well here. The new album is good. You have songs on radio. I would like to invite you for a tour.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I heard from Rocco, who has been there, and other people. It's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. And that really was an eye-opener and a life-changing trip, because as much as I've been touring in a lot of countries, I've never saw such a reception of house music, soulful house music, deep house music, in clubs and with people and on radio. And it felt like, yeah, you come to that country you always were looking for, because people understand and feel the music you feel too.
So you land in South Africa after the call from DJ Christos you received. What was the first place? Which was the first place you ever played at?
It was Capital in Rosebank,
Okay.
which now has a different name, I think. And it was a Thursday night with Christos and Black Coffee, who played after me.
All right. And then the next place?
The next place was Friday, I'm not sure. Saturday, we've been to Medunza in Pretoria.
Okay.
An event Christos put together. And Sunday, I've been to Botswana for the first time.
Wow.
Yes, after Medunza, we flew for one gig to Botswana.
Okay. Man, it must have been an awesome experience to just... Was it the first time you come into Africa, by the way?
Yes, southern part of Africa. I've been to Morocco before, but I wouldn't really call that.
But it's in
It's
Africa.
Africa.
It's in Africa.
It's all Africa, I agree.
So now the track has been received. You've done that tour. Was it just a weekend tour or?
That only was a weekend tour. I think I arrived Wednesday and left Monday or something like this. But luckily, you know, the gigs worked well. I clicked with Christos and he re-invited me same year for more gigs during December. And we as well went to Swaziland for, which was back then a legendary crossover, the 24 hours. Yeah. And the following year I was invited to as well be part of the Southern African Music Conference as a speaker, and I did a production workshop, and so the connection became more and more.
So I'm sure now when you're doing these workshops, you're doing these gigs, what was your thinking when you look back and say, this is where I began and now this is where I'm at? What's the next step? What are you thinking now in terms of how do I take my music forward? The first album's out, received well. Is there pressure for a second one now?
I didn't really feel pressure. I felt like the album did good things for me. So I want to release another one, hoping it will do well in some kind of aspects, opening doors, enabling to travel to new countries and so forth. I was, mainly wanting to have a second one because of those thoughts, not really pressure. Actually, thinking back, I never felt pressure to do or to follow up certain things. Maybe until my kids were born. Now I feel I have to keep on going to create income to feed my family sometimes. But it's as soon as I close the door here and work, it's not really affecting me. I want to create anyway. But I think kids and family might have put that a bit of pressure on, that you have to keep on going, but not that first album. I just, it kind of overwhelmed me what happened, because it was more successful than expected. And I always believe, don't put too much expectations behind something, then it only can be a good surprise.
Yeah. I'll take you to a track that actually was a buzz, there was a buzz phrase in that track, played at home in our household. My mom used to always sing along to it. One word only, complicated, with Kafele. When you did that song, you've done the instrumentation and stuff. What says to you, I need Kafele on this song?
It actually was specifically done for Kafele. I remixed a Kafele track before, which was Above the Sky by Andy Compton.
Andy Compton, yeah.
Or Rules. It actually was Andy Compton, the first Andy Compton, before he only did the Rules.
Yes.
And, I loved Kafele. The combination of trumpet and singing, and he sounded fresh. So I asked him, can't we do more? And he was yes. And so I started working on Complicated. Often the process is like you described it. I do a playback, and afterwards the playback tells me this fits very well to a certain singer, which is the common way, that I don't have a person in mind. I just try to do a nice playback, and the playback later tells me or gives me an idea who would fit on it.
Nice. Now I want to take you back to 2012. But before we get into 2012, let's take a little break and make sure that we are fresh to talk about the release that happened in 2012. I'm sure you know where I'm taking you to. This is Twan FM 93.6, Soulscapes with CRG.
That I would never find a girl like you. Something told me that you were too good to be true. You make me feel a love so deep, deeper than blue. Never before have I felt the way that I do. Treasure I found in
tuned into Soulscapes with CRG, and as I said, we're going to go into 2012 with Ralf Gum. Big year. That was, man, I can't even describe it myself. Because all I remember, that's the first time I actually met you. And I was taking a friend of mine, Tendai, who actually did an interview on you for BPM magazine, together with Monique. And I was badly dressed. 2012 was my worst year in terms of dressing. But in any case, talking about dressing, you dressed the nation with beautiful music. That's when you released your album, which had Take Me to My Love, Never Leaves You. When that song came out, what was the feeling that you had?
I can't even describe it. It happened so fast, and it was amazing, overwhelming, exciting, all at the same time. 2012 has been a life-changing year for me. After being booked since 2008, regular here, coming more, bringing my wife with me on those trips, we decided to move to South Africa in 2012. I finished that album in my bedroom here, which was the first studio in SA. I worked on it, like I said, after Uniting Music. I just wanted to have a follow-up, and I started working on it, I think, in 2009, and brought most of it with me and finished it, like I said, here with the new energy. And moving to South Africa and receiving that love for the music, and specifically this album in the same year, was something I can't put in words.
Because all I can tell you, I can let me paint you a picture. Maybe you were inside and didn't see what was happening outside. I remember on a Thursday night, we were at Shaguma, a cafe there, and that was when you were launching it, and you had Ree Morris and all the other guys performing there. Little nice private function, right? It was cool. The next day, we decided we want to go to House 22 and check out Ralf, because we had seen Ralf the day before. We had sat at the table together with Tim White,
and it was
Christos.
crazy.
It was great. It was great. We're close to a living legend. The next day, I couldn't even catch sight of you, because the queue at House 22 on the outside was so crazy. If you got in, you had to be in. If you came out, you're not going out again. You're not going in again. That's how crazy it was that day. When you saw such things happening, did that reaffirm your decision to say, I've done the right thing to move to South Africa?
I think it was one of the craziest parties ever. I think House 22, I never saw it that crazy like on that night.
That's the only night I've seen it like that.
Yes. It makes you proud, it makes you strong, but it can't affirm the decision to live in another country, because parties are only part of it. If you don't feel at home in a certain place, only filling up a club will not make you feel better or home. So it was part of that, it's all little pieces of a puzzle which came together. And I'm happy where I am now in life, and I'm happy that about the decision that I took 10 years ago to move here. Because I feel home, and I'm grateful that I was enabled to find that home here, and music is what connects us and the vehicle which enables me to be here. So it's part of it, and it's a memory which will never fade, that night at House 22, but it can't affirm the decision to move to another country, I think, alone.
All right. So now we move along. GoGo Music. GoGo Music is releasing, and you're now finding different artists, meeting up with different artists in South Africa, the likes of Brayu, whom you did in the city with. and you met the likes of Ayanda Gia, and worked on some good tracks with her, as well as I forget the names, but a number of local artists. Is this you now opening up and expanding and saying you're looking for the artist, or you're getting those artists as suggestions from fellow producers around? And how are producers receiving you within South Africa at that point?
I mean, what I'm really lucky with and grateful about is that the scene welcomed me here.
Yes.
It's nothing you naturally or automatically can expect. That you move to another country, you go into that scene and become part of it. You must be allowed to do so, and I'm grateful. South African house music and music community, welcomed me and accepted me. The collaborations, some are suggestions, some are, you hear them on another record and
right.
you think you want to work with them. Others are just dreams you want to make come true. Like, obviously I knew about Brayu long time before I moved here. He's was a world superstar, Grammy Award winner, and his tone on the trumpet always fascinated me. So it was a wish, or I wanted to make my own dream come true by working with him. And you never know if you can make it happen. Luckily, he was an open-minded person and liked the music, so it happened. Ayanda Gia, because you mentioned her, I have to be honest, I didn't know her before Sir LSG had her on his album Moving Circles, which was released in 2017. And when I mixed the album for Sir LSG, I did the final mix for him, and she just grabbed my attention and stood out on that album. I knew other singers on it, so I have to be fair, but she was like, oh wow, who is this? I need to work with her too. So it's different ways you come across artists.
Now
you just have to keep your ears and eyes open.
Oh yes, definitely. Now I'll come to the back end of the music, the studio works, the artists that we don't see, the likes of your Bongi Mvuyanas, who are the front leaders in the songs. I see GoGo Music has had a certain loyalty to certain musicians, right? For instance, the one who caught my eye was Christian, your bass guitarist that you most often use. How are those relationships formed, and how are they still kept going, seeing as he's in Germany, you are now here, and is he a long-time friend? And
some of them are friends, some of them you work with them. I think it's very important that you vibe with a person you do art with. Art is something very emotional, and you as well have to think in same ways to make it work if you're not at the same place.
Yes.
If you're at the same place, still it helps. But you can have more influence. So, some relationships grew and you keep them because both parties like the result and the work they do, and you keep going. I feel keeping relationships is important because in a group, it's easier to grow together.
Yes.
And sometimes you can't keep relationships with people, then unfortunately you need to move on. But yeah, I like long-term working relationships. I know what I get. The person knows who he works with. He knows he gets his payment. Everything is easy, you know, and it's, if it works, keep it.
For those who are confused, when I said Christian, he's the bass guitarist who plays for Ralf Gum. And if you really want to pay attention to some good bass lines, go to, most of the track twos in your albums. I actually noticed on Never Leaves Me, He played Burning Star,
Yeah.
intriguing bass line, as well as on In the City. He played track 2, the one with Jocelyn Matthew. Your Love is a Star.
In Progressions, he played the first.
The
Back
first
to
track.
Love.
Yeah?
Was Back
Exactly.
to Love first
I was
one?
going to go
Yeah.
to that one. That guy is so tricky on that bass guitar, man. Man, have you opened up, like, say, different artists? Say, for instance, now you've worked at the likes of, say, LSG under GoGo Music. Have you opened up to say, Lesego, you can work with Christian on your project? Or is it one of those things whereby when they come in, they bring in their own musicians, so to speak?
It depends, LSG built his own pool of musicians he works with,
Okay.
which is a good thing in the beginning to work with local people, because I think until you have a mutual understanding and know each other very well, it's good to have those people with you while working, because you need to exchange your ideas, what you want to achieve. You need to guide the musician in the beginning. The musician might not know what kind of bass lines you like.
Exactly.
If it's a bass player in that case. So I think it's good he built his own pool. But of course it's open, Christian is a session musician. Everybody who wants can approach him and book him. I think he wouldn't say no to work. Every musician needs work, and it's not a secret that he played on my tracks. You can look him up. You find him on social media. If you want to have him on bass, just contact him, With others, like when LSG told me he wants to do an album, I helped him actively to, have contact to some Café Le Trumpets and so forth, because he needed it for the album, or he wanted it for the album. And so you as well actively connect people.
Beautiful, beautiful. So GoGo Music is not just a label that just, brings in one or two musicians from there. It's a pool of artists. It's a pool of musicians that gather under that very label. And now, talking about the releases that you've done, I'm going to focus now on your post-progressions releases. COVID era. That time you have more time to be sitting in the studio. I mean, we are all at home at that point. What then says to you, okay, I want to release something ever so often during the pandemic?
After Progressions, for the first time, I didn't have that feeling that I need another album which opens some doors or which does achieve certain things for me. And I constantly was working on albums. So even before the pandemic, I was tired of having an album out and starting right away a new one. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be able to release faster. I wanted to be able to have just one song, you like it, and you don't have to wait until 10 other songs are done until you can release it. And until then, it might have not the same, it might not excite you that much anymore. So I wanted to release faster. I made the decision to release some singles before pandemic started.
Okay.
Then, unfortunately, it hit us. We had to sit at home, and like you say, we had even more time to do more songs. And I liked it to, kind of regular release something while I wasn't able to connect with people in many other ways. We couldn't perform, we couldn't go out there and be with people. We even couldn't go to radio and do interviews.
Yeah.
So I felt like if I put out music regularly, it kind of, the connection to people will not be lost, because you still can listen to something, and I still have some work which keeps me sane while I only sit at home.
Yeah. So now you have all these tracks that you're producing ever so often. Like, I think it was it every month that you released something?
No, it was maybe every third month.
Every third month or so. That seemed like it was a lot. I somehow thought it was like every month, because that's when we got the the track with CEO, the track with Bongi, Soweto Gospel Choir. Yo, man, you gave us quite a lot then. So before you actually worked on those
It would
songs,
have been, by now it would have been enough to fill an album.
an album, yes.
But for me, it, I don't know, was a logical way to fill those 2 years of pandemic and lost time.
On behalf of everyone, I would say thank you for that because it kept us so sane. So when you were working on those things, had you already identified the people who you wanted to work with, or it was one of those things, spur of the moment, I'm sitting one day on a Monday, Tuesday, well, we don't even know what date it is because it's pandemic time. Let me just call Soweto Gospel Choir. Was it one of those moments, or it was pre-planned?
Soweto Gospel Choir actually was an interesting story because we met flying back from London, UK,
Okay.
prior the pandemic, and we recognized each other when we were boarding, and one guy started talking to me, and we were chatting the whole flight actually about music and life and everything. And he had written only the chorus of Ramazedi,
Yeah.
and said he can imagine having that in a house context. And I said I can imagine very well recording you guys in my studio because you are amazing. So we started building the playback around that existing Ramazedi chant.
Okay.
And as much as pandemic has been bad for us as entertainment industry in general, it had good sides too, because the Soweto Gospel Choir is steadily touring all over the world. But now due to pandemic, they have been here, and we had finally the time to go to studio and record it. singer Sio was kind of on my wish list for a long time, but I never felt I have the right playback until I had what became the playback for Unlove You. We still changed a bit after she recorded, but pretty much I sent it to her like you hear it. So that was one of those cases where the playback just told me who to approach, because you can imagine very well in your mind.
Okay. And then approaching now your 100th release. How is Ralf feeling now? Like, you're on 99. I mean, I was also on edge when I was looking at, I'm like, Ralf is on 99. I'm going to see him on the 100th one. How were you feeling then? And was there like a temptation to say, let me go back to how I started? Because over the years, of course, where you are, your sound changes, but your identity remains the same. Was there temptation to say, let me take it back and go home, let me work with 1, 2, 3 artists? Was there that thing of saying, nah, I don't know which one to take out?
Honest answer?
Yes.
We wanted to celebrate 20 years of GoGo, which actually already was last year in a big way, but then pandemic didn't make it possible to tour, didn't make it possible to put up a party, didn't allow so many things we wanted to do. And for the 100th release, I just said whatever will be 100 will be celebrated as our milestone.
Yeah.
I think 99 with Tortured Soul was a very nice release.
Oh, that was a beautiful one.
Would have been a nice 100 to have Kafele on and Bongi on the 100 is as amazing.
It's absolutely amazing, yeah.
So with Kafele, it takes you automatically back down memory lane somehow, because he has been part of the label various times, and with various strong releases, with LSG, with myself, with Andy Compton. Just to be around after such a long time and such an amount of releases makes one proud. And being able to still do what you love is amazing. But now I'm already looking at 101, I keep on moving on, and I'm very happy about the milestone, but
can I take a sneak peek under the keyboard and see who's on 101?
No, I can.
Are you
No, I can.
at liberty to tell us who's going to be on 101?
Yes, no worries. It will be Sir LSG.
Okay.
Reuniting with Brian Tember.
All right.
They had a great release 9 years ago with All I Am. I still think Sir LSG's probably biggest song to date, and the new one is beautiful too, will come out early October. So we are close.
You've heard it, Sonitorians. Early October, we're going to be hounding these guys. Actually, even before early October. You know how we do. Hint, hint, we are looking for the exclusive before it comes out. But in any case, so we're looking forward to more releases by GoGo Music. And what are the plans moving forward now? Signing more artists, doing artists' albums? What's GoGo Music got for us now from 101 and beyond?
My journey with GoGo told me to not plan too far. You plan something and then it comes otherwise. Like, we planned to have an album for the 20 years anniversary, and then pandemic came. We just take it as it comes. We have, like you said, our pool of artists. Whoever finishes music, we will release it. Sir LSG is definitely working towards an album. So what you see now are the first singles of that album, but we don't have a release date because, he's still only halfway, I would say, into the album.
All right.
I'm slowly starting to think about another album, but will continue with some more singles for I don't know which period of time. I don't want to plan too far ahead, but I feel it inside of me that another album will come, maybe starting it next year or something. Let's see. So we just keep on working, It's my daily bread to sit here if I'm not gigging and work on something.
Man. What a day. I wish we had more time because there's a lot I would love to ask. So, not so, now I'm thinking so LSG. I'm already in October now. There's a lot I'd love to ask Ralf Gum, man, but we have to carry on with the music right here on the Cap Cities number 1. Do catch us every Saturday on Soulscapes with CRG, 8 p.m. till 10. And this particular edition is on YouTube, on the Basement RSA Music page, one of our media partners, as well as our Facebook page, facebook.com/Soulscapes with CRG or /Cap Cities number 1. That's the Twana FM page. And man, Ralf, thank you very much for welcoming me into your place. I hope I can just, have a little time to just jam before I go.
Yeah.
We'll see, before I get chased out.
Yeah, no. Jam a bit, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for passing by.
Alrighty.
And the continued support.
Thank you very much, Ralf. This is Twana FM 93.6. Keep it tuned, keep it locked right here on the Cap Cities number 1. I'm CRG. You can catch me on CRG_Soulscapes. That's Twitter and Instagram. Also on Facebook, that's Soulscapes with CRG. More content. We always give you content, always new stuff when it comes to house, the music that we love so much. More of the soulful stuff. But in any case, hashtag the dance floor, hashtag 936 weekends. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.